Welcome to Season 5 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises. This podcast is for teachers who are considering leaving education but feel like they have no options. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach who guides overwhelmed teachers through a 5-step process out of education and into a life they love. I'd like to see a world where the work of teachers is valued and respected, and that teachers have a career pathway that enables them to continue to offer value to society beyond their work in the classroom. So in this season, we'll be speaking with wellbeing experts who can help you to stay well as you plan your exit. If you're almost ready to leave and you need to redo your resume, check out my Resume Revamp digital download. It's a comprehensive guide to making your resume show off your assets. For $49.95 Australian dollars, you'll get pre-filled, eye-pleasing resume and cover letter templates in both US letter and A4 size, a lexicon of teacher terminology with a translation to corporate speak, and a bonus PDF on getting past applicant tracking software. Check out the Resume Revamp package on the product page of larksong.com.au and come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Episode 7. Hi everyone and welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm really pleased to be interviewing Ros Beaver, who has taken the plunge out of teaching and is now living her best life. Welcome to the show, Ros.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Okay, Ros, so you're going to have to tell us, what's your story?
Well, I have always been a very creative person, and I did start off my life as a visual arts teacher in secondary school.
Okay.
Did that for about 4 years and then went overseas for what ended up being 6 years. I lived in Italy, came back with a son. So I was a single parent and I went back into teaching because that's safe. And I think that's the thing about my whole story has been this safety net. Teaching's always been a bit of a safety net for me. But I did start doing making my own jewellery, and I had a jewellery making business. So I have kind of left teaching and then come back to it and then left it again. I went through a divorce. I did a graduate diploma in psychotherapy when I was in my early 40s. And one of the questions I remember asking myself at the time, and I think it's actually a very good question for everyone to ask at some point in their life, what's the one thing that you're going to regret not having done when you're 80?
Ooh.
That came out of reading Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, I've never quite finished that book.
Oh, yeah. No, well,
I'm about 2/3 in, I think.
Yeah. So I found that a great book. I discovered that in my 30s.
Yeah.
And so for me, that answer to that question was interior design. It was the thing that I wanted to do when I was in my teenage years, but through problems at home, I couldn't study when I left university. Teaching, go back to, was the safe option. I got a teacher scholarship and did that. Anyway, I thought, I've got to do it. So I just enrolled myself in a course and was still doing, teaching in the background whilst I did this part-time course. And I just started working. And as often happens when you do take a plunge, things work out better than you can ever possibly imagine. And I had quite a successful career in that for a number of years. And I still actually do teach at the Sydney Design School as well, just on a part-time basis. But teaching, actually, I got to about, 58, 59 years of age, and I just suddenly freaked out because I looked at my super and I thought, my gosh, I just don't have very much there.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do?
And sorry, just to go back a second. So all this time you were a mother of a child.
Yep.
You went back to study.
2 kids.
Oh, you got 2 kids. Okay. And you're single. Is that right? Still?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you were studying, you're working, and you had 2 kids.
Yes.
Just go back in time for a minute. How did you make that work?
I have a wonderful family. My mum was amazing. I would not have been able to get through what I got through without my mum. My family were incredible, and I just had a very supportive community around me with people from, mothers and fathers of, the friends from the kids' school. So I've been very lucky to have always had a very supportive environment around me. And I think that's really what sustained me also I am actually someone that really enjoys having a lot on my plate. You would never hear the word I'm bored from me.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I'll always find something to do.
Yeah. Okay. So you studied design.
Yep.
You work, yeah, and you're still working at the design school.
Yeah.
So okay. So what inspired you? Like, what was it about design that you really loved?
Well, I can remember because I was actually working, and I hadn't planned this, but when I did the diploma in psychotherapy, the graduate diploma in psychotherapy, I was not planning. I only did it to get through the divorce and figure out what had gone wrong within me. I was not planning on changing a career or anything. But all of a sudden, I find myself working as an art therapist. And one of the things that what I sort of was thinking about is what am I doing? Like, why interior design? What is it about design? I've always loved it. But I would sit with clients, and while they'd be talking to me, I would be rearranging a furniture and putting a different color feature wall on and moving the pot plant over there. And I just thought, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just get this out of your system, Roz. And so that's what I did. Took the plunge and went and did that training. So I've always loved learning. I love doing learning about myself, about human behavior. So I love reading, self-help books, doing courses, workshops, that sort of thing, meeting people, communicating with people. And I also have this thing about aesthetics and beauty. So I love, being surrounded by beautiful things, by, creating beautiful space. So yeah, that was the thing that made me step into the design world. And as I said, I was probably doing that for a good close to 20 years. But then the fear of not having enough, still being single and not owning my house and not having enough in super, I thought, I went into this place of fear. And where do I go to when I'm like that? Back into teaching. Because I thought, okay, I could go back into casual teaching and really, put some money, start saving, really focus on saving and putting some money away. So that's what I've been doing.
So how old were you then?
Probably about 58.
Okay.
So, yeah, not super old, but...
Yeah, but I mean, we're looking at now retirement in our early 70s. So it's not not beyond the pale that you would be still considering working throughout that period in your late 50s into your 60s.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like there was some fear, maybe some grief around how things had panned out for you. Yep. Do you have any, what insights did you gain from that period in your life that you could now help other people with, where they may be struggling to cope with the stress and the overwhelm? I can imagine that would have been a very challenging time.
Oh, look, absolutely. Look, I think one of the biggest things I can say to teachers, because most of the teachers I know are pretty caring people and they give out a lot, like a lot. And, not for nothing, when you're on a plane, they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you go off and help others. And I think a lot of teachers, from what I've seen anyway, don't actually do that. They say yes when they should be saying no. They say no when they should be saying yes. So that's a really important one. Like, figure out what it is you need to say yes to and what you need to say no to. That's really, really important. I think also just have a look at your general, how you are health-wise, like what's your, really simple things like what's your diet, how much exercise do you do? Because you've got to actually look after your body to be able to function at its best. If you're not, are you sleeping well? Go and get your bloods checked. I was actually surprised. Like, I'm a ocean swimmer and a sailor, and I was surprised 3 years ago when I had my bloods done. I'm low in vitamin D. Now, I just was shocked. How can that be? I'm in the sun a lot. Yeah. And apparently it's not as uncommon. It's not uncommon for people as you age. It's more difficult for you to absorb vitamin D. So, have a look at your supplements. What are you taking?
Yeah.
Get your sleep sorted out. I think too, it's important to have a think about what are your thoughts, like pick yourself up on your negative thinking, because I think it's really easy to talk yourself into a negative spiral, or you can talk yourself out of it. And, there are people that are just generally optimistic and have that ability to be able to, inspire you. And you must have those people around you, people you just enjoy being around because they are optimistic and they lift you. Spend more time with them rather than the people that, kind of drag you down and, don't inspire you or lift you up. Staff rooms can be a bad place for that too, that negative talk. Not all of them, but, some of them.
I was a shocker. I was so negative. Like I couldn't stop myself. I would consider myself an optimist, like, and an outgoing, like extrovert, but I just was in such a bad place before I left.
Yeah.
That all I could see was everything that was going wrong. And I must have been such a pain in the neck to hang around with. But it's interesting what you say. I'm coming across that idea a lot lately of like kind of being that you become the five people around you, and so if you're hanging out with, people who are really negative in their thinking, or like the classic example, if you're hanging out with all the couch potatoes, you'll become a couch potato. But if you go and, hang out with the sailors and the
that's right
swimmers, you'll end up doing those kind of activities. And I was listening to Glennon Doyle speaking. I think it was a podcast or her book, but she was saying how she's she and her partner don't drink, and so they have therefore by default not become party animals, because people go out late to drink, they go out at night to do that. But she's got this whole other group of friends who get up really early in the morning and go and do some, excruciatingly early morning activity
at 6 a.m.
Yeah, and then go and have breakfast together or something. And so that her social life has shifted to the other end of the day. And I thought, that's really interesting. That is how if you wanted to quit alcohol, for instance, that would be how you would manage it. You'd have to shift your whole social life to the other end of the day, or you could, potentially.
Well, that's what I've done.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm up at 6 o'clock. I'm down at the beach, doing a run, do a swim. There's a big group of us down there that swim, and then we have coffee afterwards. And can I just say, a lot of them now are actually drinking no alcohol, zero alcohol beers and wines and things. It's in the last couple of months, I've really noticed quite a lot of people. So they're not stopping socializing. They're just changing the way they do it.
Yeah. So whereabouts do you go swimming, Ros?
Manly in Sydney.
Lovely.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. I haven't for the last week because it's been terrible weather, but normally that's where we go.
Right. Okay.
I still go down there and have my coffee in the mornings.
Oh, that sounds marvelous.
Yeah. But it's great to be around positive people. One of the guys down there, I remember him saying to me a couple of years ago, when I joined this group, I really struggled in the mornings, because he said, I'm not normally a morning person. He said, being around all these positive people at 6:30 in the morning was doing my head in.
Yeah.
He's now one of them.
No, he loves it. Yeah. I was at the gym this morning at 6:40, so a little bit later. And the gym instructor's got her eyelashes on, and, and there's another girl there with her looking just absolutely fabulous. And I'm like, my hair's frizzy, and I was just feeling a bit like I don't really quite fit the bill here, but there is something really nice to hang around with upbeat people, isn't there?
Definitely.
Isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so I love that advice about the crowd that you hang out with, and the food and sleep. Are there other things about, like, how did you deal with the mindset issues?
Look, I think it's really important that you have a look at how you are, your relationships with people, do some work around that. If you haven't got great relationships with your kids or your spouse, I think that's really important. The mindset things, I think probably the most amount of, like, I used to journal, I still journal, and I find that keeps a track of, how I'm traveling. But I have to say, since I found Psych-K, which is the process that I'm now working full time in, the mindset thing has totally transformed, because once I realize my behavior is being created by a false or a negative subconscious belief, I can just sit down and, transform that in 5 minutes. I can reprogram the subconscious so that I don't have that. I have a positive subconscious belief operating. So,
can you give us an example of what that might look like?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I'll give you an example of, I was actually very lucky last year. I had a contract at a local high school, a part-time contract, and it wasn't a full load. So instead of loading me up with substitute classes, they allowed me to work with year 12. And I'll just give you an example. One of the students, year 12 students, she did not want to come and see me for a session, but her mentor at the school really encouraged her, as did her mother. So she walked in very resistant to change. And why she was there, why they had suggested she come, was that she was having meltdowns all the time. She was a perfectionist. And you know what perfectionists are like, it doesn't matter what they do, it's never going to be good enough. So we did one balance together, and I'll explain the balance process later. And that was, I do my best, and my best is good enough. And we did this one balance in the space of about 10 minutes, and she went out. And honestly, I kind of didn't think this was going to work, because she was hard, very reluctant, very resistant to even being there. Anyway, probably 3 or 4 weeks later, she sidles up to the door of my classroom and she sticks her head in and she goes, much as I hate to admit this, I don't know what you did, but something's different. She said, I haven't had a meltdown in over a month. And both her mother and her teacher mentor said the same thing to me. Something had changed for her. She couldn't put a finger on it, but it didn't matter what she did now. She didn't have meltdowns. She, just accepted the fact that she did her best, and that was actually good enough, because she was a high achiever as well.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's the sort of thing that you can change.
So tell me more about that process.
So Psych-K, and K stands for the missing piece, the key to your psyche. It's been around for about 30 odd years, since, nearly 40 now, since the 80s. And it was developed by a psychotherapist in America by the name of Rob Williams. You can look him up on YouTube. Lovely guy. But he was a psychotherapist, and he was very frustrated at the lack of progress that he would make with his clients. He came out of corporate, and basically said, look, if we were working in a corporate scene and I wasn't seeing results, I'd be really frustrated. So anyway, he came up with this process called Psych-K, which is around balancing your subconscious beliefs, because basically only 10% of what we are aware of is operating out of our conscious mind. 90% of what we think, we believe, we create in our world, our behaviours, are created from our unconscious. We're not even aware of them. And they're created from beliefs that we've downloaded when we were children, 0 to 7 years of age, well, actually even in utero. And they just become like an operating system on a computer. They just keep running until you make a change. And so this process has a number of different processes or techniques that we can use. And pretty much it's what I like about it, even though I've done lots of therapy over, the 30 odd years. What I love about this is you don't have to sit and go way back into your childhood and relive all the experiences. You actually start from a premise of there's nothing wrong with where you are now. What do you want to create? How do you want things to be? And you start from that positive place. And some people can't even get there. They don't know what they want. So you start from, well, what don't you want? Okay, so if that's what you don't want, then what would it look like, if you knew what you did want? And so we create a goal statement around that. And then through this process, the Psych-K process, balancing, balance that into your subconscious. And then you have little action steps that you need to do afterwards just to trigger the subconscious into knowing that there's a new operating system.
So it sounds a little bit like hypnotherapy.
No, it's not hypnotherapy. No, because you're not hypnotized at all. But the process is done by communication with your subconscious, which is very simple to do with muscle testing. So if your listeners have done any kinesiology, that's muscle testing. Just seeing, what's true for you, what's not true for you. It's a very, very simple process, and what I found to be incredibly effective. Look, it is a process that can be done, and I have online and remotely, and I have worked with clients overseas. So it absolutely can be
possible.
Done.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if a teacher came to you who was struggling with stress and overwhelm, but they're planning their exit, so they've actually got a goal in mind to get out, maybe they don't exactly know what that is, what advice or encouragement would you give them to stay? I guess the focus of this season is helping people to stay well enough so that they can leave well and plan their exit.
Okay, so firstly, obviously, look after yourself. That's, a definite one. And I'll just finish off on that. Two other things. I'm quite a spiritual person, and I think that's an important dimension of us as human beings. So, meditating, people used to ask me, how do you manage to do what you do? I would teach all day in school, then I'd go and teach at the design school at night. And as long as I would meditate in between both of them, 20 minutes, half an hour was enough to, pick me up again and give me the strength to go on. Journaling is another really good thing. I've had chatted about that before. I think it's important too to have a sense of helping others in terms of outside of the school, but get involved in something that you're interested in. So I'm a surf lifesaver, and just contributing to the community, I think, is a great thing for your own personal sense of self. I think, that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that stops people from really stepping into their best life or their next life is fear. And I don't know whether you've heard this, but fear stands for false evidence appearing real. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah. So I was actually reading an article during the week that came up on ABC Online, and it was about a study by a guy called Pink. And he was looking at the career regrets that people have. And I just want to quote this if I can, because I thought it was spot on what we were talking about today. So he says, and I quote, "In the world of work, sometimes you're at a juncture in your life where you can play it safe or you can take a chance. And people play it safe and then regret it. By avoiding failure rather than achieving success, people often lament not taking the risk." And I just want to really point out that last sentence, by avoiding failure. So focusing on avoiding failure rather than focusing on achieving success, that's your your downfall.
Yeah.
And that's one of the laws of the universe, is what you focus on expands. And if you're focusing on failure, then guess what? You're going to get that. But if you're focusing on success, then you're going to get that.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we do have that natural negativity bias where we do focus on what might go wrong. But if that's where our attention's going and we're putting all our energy into that, we're almost feeding that outcome.
That's exactly right. What are you going to get? Yeah. So that's one area where Psych-K has really helped me. Over the last 4 years, I've done a lot of Psych-K training, which I was doing on the side whilst I was still, doing the teaching. And, certainly when I look at, the beliefs that now I've got running in the programs that I've, got running now in my subconscious, it's really helped me to step out with confidence to do what I'm doing now. I mean, they offered me a contract again this year at the school, and I was just so clear and so determined. No, that's it. I'm done. I need to really throw myself into this. And sometimes we are asked to really close the door before what you can't even imagine is going to open up before you. You really need to kind of commit to something. I think it was Goethe that said, as soon as you commit to something wholeheartedly, then all manner of unforeseen circumstances will come into play. And that's certainly the way my life's been time and time again. But
Yeah.
I just think you've got to have the courage to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I just did a little bit of a 1 day a week job over the summer for just to help some people out who needed a program coordinator for a kids program. And when it ended, they said to me, "Oh, what are you going to do now?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'll go back to running my business, but nothing particularly." And then, bam, an email from a friend. Would you be interested in this work? And 2 connection requests on LinkedIn. Do you want to collaborate on this? Do you want to collaborate on that? Like all these things just.
Yep.
So then I'm like swamped again by emails and running webinars, and it's been really exciting in like 4 weeks. Unexpectedly.
Well,
so really it is
no, that's
exciting.
what happens.
Yeah,
that's
because
exactly
I literally shut that door, and then I was open to these other possibilities. So I love the way you've framed that. So if someone wanted to work with you to use this process, how would they best get in touch with you, and what would that look like?
So I've got a website, rosbeaver.com.au, and they can go onto the website, and there they can see exactly. So there's a page there on how I work with adults. I do a lot of work with teens. Performance anxiety. All the music students came and we did a session on, performance anxiety. And I remember one girl couldn't even go down to the hall and play the grand piano, and one session. And her action step was go to the hall and play the piano. And she just was amazing. She just sat down and she said, "I cannot believe I'm not shaking. Normally I just shake. Normally I can't even think of the music. Normally it's so powerful." So I love working with teenagers. I've always loved teenagers, being a secondary school teacher. So there's a page there on working with teens. And I think too, there's I'm assuming Melbourne's the same as Sydney, but, we have just an epidemic of, teen anxiety and depression. And just sadly, we just don't have the resources. If someone's got an urgent referral, I mean, if you've got an urgent referral, it's like 3 weeks. If it's just a normal one, it's 6 to 9 months to go and see a psychologist. So to be able to have something like this, which is such a helpful process to be able to, transform the anxiety and the stress that these kids are having is, so powerful. And then I also work with creatives, because being a creative myself, I've got a lot of experience in the dramas that us creatives have sometimes, and the lack of confidence that we have in our own abilities. And, sometimes it's not realistic. Other people are saying how great your work is, but, this was for me anyway. And I know other creatives who are like it, where, we can be hopelessly, "Oh, it's not that great." We'll put ourselves down, our work down or whatever. I really enjoy working with creative people as well. So they go onto my website and have a look. There's a whole page of frequently asked questions. There's also some videos there that you can have a look at, which actually show Rob Williams and Bruce Lipton. He's a cell biologist that's very involved in PSYCH-K as well. And you can see them explaining the process.
Right, so there's some good resources there, and I can put the link to your website in the show notes for this episode, so that people can find you. So before we wrap this up, Ros, I've just got one last question for you. What's your favourite song?
Oh, my favourite song. Oh gosh, Dance.
Dance, okay. Like
it's a
you're gonna have to give me
song,
more information.
It's when you get the choice to sit it out or dance.
Right. Okay. And who's the artist?
It's a country song. I'll have to find out and send it to you. I've told my kids they can play that at my funeral.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, maybe that's what I should be asking everyone. What's your funeral song?
Yeah. Well, I've got 2. The other one was you would never have heard of, because it was written by a friend of mine who's now sadly passed away. But I have a recording of that, and this other one, which is all about, when life when life gets you down, then, when love lets you down, make a choice to get up and dance. And I think that pretty much describes my life. It doesn't matter what you've been through. Tomorrow's a new day, and, let's get into it. Have some fun.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Well, Ros Beaver, thank you so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thanks. It's been great.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast presented by Larksong Enterprises with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. Thanks for listening. If you need more support in your journey out of education, check out larksong.com.au and book a triage call. I'm a career transition coach for educators, and I support teachers in their journey out of education and into a life they love. I've been where you are now, and you don't need to do this alone.